Hello friends, this is Om Prakash Samantray, Assistant Professor in CSC. We are discussing database management systems. In my previous video, I have explained what is a schedule and what is a serializable schedule. In this video, we'll discuss the locking techniques used in concurrency control and some timestamp based protocols used for concurrency control in DBMS. Let us start with the locking technique for the concurrency control. Concurrency control is needed in order to control multiple access to the database by multiple users at the same time. Okay, so when multiple users or applications are accessing the same database at the same time, then in order to preserve all the properties of the transactions, we need to use some techniques so that we can control the concurrent access to the database. So locking is a technique used by the concurrency control manager of DBMS, which helps in controlling the concurrent access to the database. So lock is a variable which is associated with every data item in the database. So every data item is associated with a variable. The variable is called as a lock, right? So generally, there is one lock for each data item in the database, and locks are used as a means of synchronizing the access by concurrent transactions to the database items. And even if the logging system is good for concurrency control, two problems are associated with this. These are deadlock and starvation. You'll come to know what is deadlock and what is starvation later. So locking schemes are of two types: binary locks and shared and exclusive lock. Binary locking scheme, and because of the problems in binary locking scheme, we have used shared and exclusive locking scheme. So in the binary locking scheme, as the name suggests, the lock of any data item can have two values. As the name suggests, there are two values for the lock variable, either 0 or 1. If the lock of any item x, you can see here, if lock of x denotes that the lock variable associated with the item x is equals to 1, then the transaction is forced to wait, means the item x is locked by some other transaction. That's why the value of lock of x is equals to 1. Hence the requesting transaction has to wait until the item x is unlocked by the transaction which has acquired its lock. Similarly, if the lock variable value is 0, then the meaning is item x is free. It is not being locked by any of the transactions. So the requesting transaction can access the item x and immediately set the value of lock to 1 so that other transaction cannot access it. So in order to achieve the mutual exclusion, that is, at any point of time, only one transaction can access a data item. That is called as mutual exclusion, right? So in the binary locking scheme, there are two operations. One is lock item, another is unlock item. So if any transaction wants to either read the item or write the item, the transaction has to lock the item first, right? And in order to lock the item, this operation, the lock item of x, here x is the data item of the database. We can also write y, z, any item, right? So to lock the item x, the lock item operation is issued. Once the task is over, to unlock the item, unlock item of x is issued. You can see in this diagram, if a transaction is issuing lock item of x, then what is going on here? First it checks whether the lock value is 0 or not. If it is 0, then only it can access the lock. Once after accessing the lock, the value must be set to 1. If this condition is false, what does it mean? The lock of x becomes 1. That means the lock of item x is already held by some other transaction. That's why the requesting transaction has to wait until the lock of x becomes 0, means until the item x is released by the transaction, right? So this is the procedure when one transaction issues the lock item x. Similarly, when a transaction issues unlock item, means the item is held by the transaction. Now want to release that item, then simply set the value of lock for that data item x to 0, means other transaction can access the value of x now. So this is lock and this is unlock, only two operations are there. But you can see here, these are the binary locking scheme. If a transaction wants to read or write, then the transaction must issue the lock item operation. Similarly, once the read item or write item operations are over, the unlock must be issued. Similarly, another rule is if the transaction holds a lock on item X already, then no need to issue the lock item again. It's obviously true always. Similarly, if there is no lock held by any transaction, then it is not required to issue unlock. This is also a usual thing. If there is an item is not being locked, so it's not necessary to issue unlock operation. So these are the basic simple rules of binary locking scheme, and the main purpose of this binary locking scheme is one item must be used by only one transaction at a particular moment. Once the task is over, then the item must be released so that other transaction can acquire the lock on that particular item. So that is a binary locking scheme. So what is the problem in this binary locking scheme? Whenever a transaction wants to read or write the data item x, x must be locked. If x is locked, then other transactions cannot even read, cannot even write. But if simultaneous transactions are trying to read the value of x, then practically it is not a problem. If simultaneously many applications or many users are trying to read the value of x, so reading a value is not a problem because they are not going to modify the value. So simultaneous read is not a practical problem. But if simultaneously they are trying to write the value of x, then that may create some problem and that will lead to inconsistency. Hence, simultaneous read operations must be allowed in a transaction. But in binary locking scheme, that simultaneous read operation is not allowed because the item is locked even when the transaction is trying to read the item x, and once the item is locked, other transactions cannot access it. That is the problem in binary locking scheme. Hence, the lock operation in the previous scheme, that is binary locking scheme, is now divided into two types of locks: read lock and write lock. Read lock is also known as shared lock. Write lock is also known as exclusive lock. Read lock and write lock. So when a item is locked in read mode, the transaction can only read the item. It cannot write the item. Similarly, other transactions can read the item but cannot write the item. So when a transaction T locks one item X in read mode, then T can read the value of X. Similarly, other transactions can also read the value of X, but nobody can write the value of X, right? Similarly, when the item X is locked in write mode or exclusive mode by transaction T, then transaction T can write and read the value of X, because write is a superset of read operation. If you are locking an item in write mode, you can read and you can write. So T has locked the item X in write mode. Now T can read the item X as well as write the value of X, but other transactions cannot read, cannot write. That is the difference between your shared lock and exclusive lock. Now in this scheme, you can see here a transaction must issue read lock or write lock before it wants to read the item X. Similarly, the transaction T must issue write lock operation before it wants to write the item X. Similarly, if read and write operations both are completed, then unlock operation must be issued by the transaction. Similarly, if already read lock and write lock are held on an item X, then no need to issue either read lock or write lock operation. Similarly, if any item is not being held by the transaction, it's not necessary to issue unlock operation. So these are the basic rules of the shared and exclusive locking scheme. And you can see the pseudocode here. If one transaction is trying to read the item X, it has to read lock. Now, if read lock is issued, what is going to be happen? If write lock is issued, what is going to be happen? Right. If read lock is issued, then it checks whether the lock of item X is unlocked or not. If it is unlocked, then you lock that item in read lock mode, because simultaneous number of transactions can acquire read lock on a particular data item simultaneously. That's why it is keeping track of how many transactions are reading the item X. So that's why a variable is used here, number of reads. The number of reads of that particular item X is set to 1 here, and in the next iteration, or when other transactions are trying to read the value of X, the values will be incremented here. So it keeps track of how many number of transactions are reading the value of X at a particular time. And when later when it will issue unlock operation here, unlock operation, when a transaction is issuing unlock on item X, automatically the value of number of reads will be decremented here. So while locking an item in lock read mode, the number of reads is incremented here. While unlocking the item X from read mode, then the number of reads is decremented here. So what does it mean? The same data item can be read by many transactions at the same time in read lock mode. But in write lock mode, only one transaction can read and write a particular data item X. No other transactions are allowed to read and allowed to not allowed to write. That is the meaning of this shared and exclusive lock technique. You can go through this and try to understand this. If you have any queries, please put the question in the comment section so that I can answer this. Now, conversion of locks. You see, read lock and write lock. These are the two types of locks in this scheme. If one item is locked in read mode and later during execution of the transaction, write lock need is required by the same transaction, then upgradation can be done. So, instead of unlocking that item again, looking for write lock on the same item, from read lock automatically upgradation can be done to the write lock operation. Similarly, if the transaction is holding a write lock on a particular item X, and later during the transaction it requires only the read lock, then downgradation can be done. So upgrading and downgrading of the locks is also supported by the transaction processing, right? So you can see here upgrading and downgrading of lock is used. The lock table must include transaction identifiers in the record structure for each lock to store the information on which transaction hold locks on the item. So whenever these upgradation downgradations are done by the transactions, automatically the corresponding table lock table must be updated so that um, other transactions can have the idea of which item is held by which of the transactions, so that it will be a very easier procedure for the transaction manager to control access of the data items in the database. Now come to two-phase locking technique. There is a technique called as two-phase locking. As the name suggests, there are two phases or two levels, you can say. The first phase is called as the growing phase. Second phase is called as shrinking phase. Growing phase is also known as expanding phase. So in that growing phase, logs on item are acquired, but none of the logs are released. So whatever logs are required for a transaction's execution are acquired in the first phase, that is growing phase. And once the task is over, all the logs are released in the second phase, that is shrinking phase, right? And the statement of two-phase locking is the first unlock operation must come after all the lock operations. That is, all the lock operations must precede the first unlock operation. This statement is very, very important. All the lock operations must precede the first unlock operation. Means in a transaction, all the lock operations must appear before the first unlock operation. Then only we can say that the transaction is satisfying the rules of two-phase locking. And the two-phase locking guarantees serializability. If it is not supporting two-phase locking, then definitely database will be in inconsistent state after execution of a schedule. Right. So in this example, you can see here, this is one unlock operation, unlock Y. After unlock Y, again you have write lock. So according to two-phase locking, all the lock operations must appear before the unlock operation. Right? Here also, this write lock must appear before the unlock operation. So these two transactions or this schedule is not in two-phase locking protocol, not according to the two-phase locking protocol. That's why there may be some inconsistent result here. If you take the initial value and try to execute these two, then these are the two values, and if they are executed um, in an parallelly in an interference way, they interfere with each other, interleaved manner, then automatically values will be changed for some of the schedules. So these two transactions are not obeying the two-phase locking protocol. Now if you change the order of the statements, yeah, this is the same diagram. You can change the order. Yeah, you can see here the write lock item which appeared in this the previous one. Write lock appears after the unlock. Here also write lock of Y appears after the unlock of X. But if you change the order here and here, you get these two. You just changed the order of these two operations here. And now whatever may be the schedule will be a serializable one, because all the locks are in one phase, all the unlocks are in one phase. You can see the first read lock and write lock. This is your growing phase. Unlock X, unlock Y. This is your shrinking phase. So the upper one is your growing phase, lower one is your shrinking phase. So when the transactions are obeying the rules of two-phase locking protocol, then definitely it leads to, or it guarantees the serializability for all kinds of schedules. So but thing is that this is also the same example. These two transactions are executed in an interleaved manner. These two transactions are not supporting two-phase locking, so it uh, it may not it may not be serializable. That's why it is written non-serializable schedule. But when you take these two transactions in here, definitely you'll get it serializable schedule. So this is a task for you. You just put these T1 prime and T2 prime in place of T1 and T2 and see what are the results of X and Y. Then you'll come to know this will become a serializable schedule. And you know how to check the serializable schedule once you put T1 prime and T2 prime here, and to check whether this schedule is serializable or not, you can draw a precedence graph, and if a cycle is there in that precedence graph, then that schedule is not a serializable schedule. You can watch my previous videos to know what is a precedence graph and what is a serializable schedule. Now the problem of two-phase locking is a deadlock situation. Deadlock means when one transaction is waiting for another transaction, second transaction, and the second is waiting for the first one. The T1 prime is waiting for T2 prime, T2 prime is waiting for T1 prime, right? Oops. T2 prime has held the item X, read lock of X. Now T1 has locked the item Y, you can see. Now T1 prime has Y, T2 prime has X. Now T2 prime is looking for Y, T1 prime is looking for X. So T1 prime is waiting for T2 prime, T2 prime is waiting for T1 prime. It's a circular wait. No transactions can proceed its execution. This situation is called as a deadlock. Either of the transactions need to be aborted, then only they can proceed. So what are the different techniques used to prevent the deadlock? Prevention is better than cure. So before the deadlock happens, it must be prevented. So there are two schemes used here: wait die and wound wait. We'll discuss later.